Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Sefy Tofan, and in today's video, I want to talk with you about how you can use Cursor to build AI-based apps without knowing code. I was able to build a couple of those apps, and I have zero knowledge about how to write code, just using Cursor and couple of workflows that I will go over with you in this video. So Cursor is an AI-powered integrated development environment. It means that it can develop your own application. It can write your own code without you writing a single line of code. And if you can see this Google trend, you will see that the ability to write with code really exploded in the middle of last year. So in the past 6 months, we can see a tremendous amount of growth of interest on those IDE systems. And again, what it literally do, it help you use LLMs, large language models, to write the code for you. And you can do it with zero knowledge on how to code. When I started, I didn't know a single line of code. Of course, now I understand a little bit more based on the questions I have asked inside Cursor. But again, I don't know how to code, and I already have a 70% ready application before lunch. And it's very important because I see so many people talk online about this. Yeah, you can use Cursor, you can write one prompt and it will create a complete application. Yes, of course, it can do it, and you will have a couple of authentication page like sign up, login, and maybe a feature or two features in your application, but it won't really be a robust solution to a problem that provides a lot of value to a specific type of audience that then you can use to monetize and build upon. So if you just want this one prompt app workflow, yes, you will find it in this video as well, but this is not how I work on Cursor. I prefer building a very robust systems, and I will share a couple of my workflows in this video. So from my perspective, one of the biggest things that I found working with Cursor is that you don't just act as someone who write the code, so like a developer. You need to see the picture from a bird's eye view. So in essence, you are a team lead or even the CEO, and you work with all of those team leads, all of those different LLMs, and you want to be able to think about three different things. The first one is becoming the product manager, meaning thinking about the user experience and the user interface, what the user see when he goes into the app. Does he have any onboarding process when he sign in or log in? If he have an onboarding process, what this onboarding process looks like. And then you want to be able to also think as a backend developer, meaning all of those invisible processes, connections to the database that the application need to have. And in the end, you also want to be the front-end developer, which means that you want to think what the audience itself or what the user of your application can see, if it's a web or if it's iOS application. So if you think about building an app with Cursor, you want to have in your mind those three different teams that you should operate like. And if you are able to plan a great UX UI and at the same time understand exactly how it connects to your backend and exactly what the user see in the front end, you will be able to build a really successful and robust application with Cursor using LLMs to write your code. When I'm saying letting LLMs writing the code for you, in essence, what it really means, it's about knowing how to talk with LLMs. And that's the entire difference of what those applications like Cursor or Windsurf are giving us. They give us the ability to talk with an LLM, and this LLM knows how to write code for us, which means that if we know how to talk with an LLM and at the same time we have great workflows that work for different use cases, we will be able to build a very successful app. And some of those workflows will be starting the app itself, so how to start the app, how to plan and new implementations of features, how to solve a problem without falling to a looping problems where it's you give the LLM the problem itself, it solves the problem, but it creates a new problem. Then you solve this problem, it creates a new problem, and then you solve this problem, and it creates the first problem you solved. So then you will be stuck in a loop of solving problems without really moving forward in building your app. So one of those workflows is knowing how to work on those processes. And then, of course, it's very important to understand your architecture of the application. many times because we don't know how to code. I don't know, and if you don't know and watching this video, then it's very easy to get lost with what the LLMs are giving us and what the application is like, the way the application is being built. But it's very important to all the time understand what is the architecture, because then you are really able to solve the problems. Because the entire process, it's an LLM building a section of your application, and then there are a couple of different problems in how we built it based on UX, UI, maybe it's like TypeScript, whatever, a couple of different problems. And then your goal is to be able to help him solve those problems. So let's go over some of those workflows. And then in the end, I'll give you a couple of my top tips after working with Cursor for the past month, building 2 apps already. Now, those are the workflows I'm going to talk about in this video. And if you want to learn more, building a school community, it's super cheap right now. It's $27 a month for the first 50 members. We're already 30 members in. And in this community, what I'm going to teach is 2 different things. It's about building a business using AI-powered solutions, like using Cursor to building an app or AI agents. And at the same time, the second thing is learning how to not just build this business, but learning how to market this business so you can actually get clients and make money from whatever you are building. So if you're interested, you can go now in the description below. I put the link. For the next 20 members that will join, they will also get a 30 minutes one-on-one call with me, which is super awesome because I love seeing different people and hearing different ideas that I can help build. So check this out and let's continue. Let's go into Cursor, and I want to give you a couple of different workflows. The first one is how to start your application building. From my perspective, every time I'm starting an application building, I'm thinking MVP, right? Minimum valuable product, which means that it's not the robust solution that you will provide clients 1 year from now, but it's the fastest way. What is the fastest way with least amount of features that will actually solve a problem for my audience, for my users, that I can just post and start getting feedback from people. So from that perspective, this is how I am building my MVPs. So the way I do it is I'll go to Cursor and I will start a new project by opening a folder. And in this project, I'll just add a folder called Docs. And in this folder, I'll start adding different documents. The first one will be the MVP. That's like the number one process I start with, because I want to be very clear on what I am building. Because if I'm not clear, the AI won't be able to really understand what we're trying to build. So I'm trying to go into going into depth with what I'm telling him the application is about, even if it's just like 3 features. I will start with my core philosophy or overview. What is, for example, the description of the application itself? Then once I have this, I will lay down my core philosophy. For example, in my application that I'm building, her name is Q, that's the idea of the application, and it helps people close the gap between an idea and execution. And there is a lot of in-depth processes in there, we won't dive into it, but when I started thinking about building the app, my philosophy was first principle approach, so first principle teaching, user-centered design. I really wanted to do it for the user itself, so they will be able to actually move their ideas into execution extremely fast. And then I gave it the core problem statement, like what do we build and why do we build it? So he will be with me as a partner on the same team. Once I'm building the overview and the core philosophy, I'll go to core functionalities and I'll break those down into every single feature I want to add inside this application. So I'll start with, for example, user authentication, which sounds like the basic thing, but I want to know exactly what my app can do. So when I give it to the LLM, he knows exactly what he needs to build. So for example, user authentication will be the title, and then in it, I will say exactly what are the different processes or steps or functions or features, whatever, that the application can do. For example, user can sign up and log in to the application. User can log out. User can reset their password, can view their profile, can delete their account. Like every single action they can do authentication-wise, I will write this and break this down. Then I'll go and do the same for every single feature. So for example, if the feature is I have an agent that knows how to talk with the people on my application with the chat interface. I will describe every single element of this thing. And of course, I use OpenAI like o1 or o3 Mini or Claude to do those things. I just take all of my template, I go there and I start brainstorming and breaking down every feature. I remove, I give feedback up until the moment I have a ready file, and then I'll come here and I'll just copy paste it. So I'll do the same with every single feature. And then I'll do the same with the user interface and experience. So as you remember before, we talked about like UX, UI, and being the product manager. So here, I want to be able to first describe what are the core pages I have on the app, so a bird's eye view of my application, and then I'll start diving into the actual design I want to have in every single page. When you do it, you are literally both building the backend functionalities, what the application can do from a backend system, and how it looks for the user from a front end perspective. And if you are able, when you write in the front end, to combine those two together, so for example, in the user interface, there is a login page. When the user pressed on login, then user can log into the application. Or let's take a more advanced feature. For example, we have a personal hub that save information about my user. And in this feature, I want the user to be able to see a description of the information we stored about them and what are their weaknesses or strengths. So if I'm able to show this in the front end and describe it here, and then I can also describe how this is connected to the backend table that store all of this information, the LLM will know exactly what is the front end dev that he needs to do, as well as the backend, and how both of them are connected. Then I will go into the entire concept of UX, user experience, which is the key user flows. What is the flow I want to have for my user, which from my perspective, it's extremely important. I want to know exactly what happened from the moment they land on the homepage, click on the sign up for a new account. Do they get an email or not for reassuring their account, like checking their account that it's like valid? If so, then what happens after they get the email? Do they go to a login page and log in? Is there an onboarding process that they need to go through after they log in? If they have an onboarding, how many pages we have on the onboarding? What do we ask them on the onboarding? What do we need to take from them, and how do we save it into the database on the onboarding? When they finish the onboarding and went to whatever, the dashboard or the first page of the application, what they need to see, how they see it, why it's important that they will see it. So this is when I'm breaking those different first-time experiences and processes. And it's very different, the first-time experience a lot of times, based on if there is onboarding, we need to save all of this information into our database to know that the next time they log in, they don't go into an onboarding. So by describing all of those different things in the MVP document, the markdown and the document, I really know how to describe the application to the LLM so they can build it for me. Then I'll even give it the tech stack of what I want. This is basic, like super basic for the database, Node.js, TypeScript, Claude and Perplexity for like API integrations and front end. And then I'll actually start talking with them about the development approach. So like, how do we build it? Because if I'll just tell them, okay, here is all the information, build this app, it will be pretty chaotic. So what I found is that those LLMs work very well if you take those big tasks and you start chunking them down into smaller tasks. So in phase one, we just do the project setup and foundation. Okay, so we know that we're going to work with this tech stack. Let's download all of those tools into our workspace. Once we have this, and the phase one is finished, let's build the authentication. So now we just work on authentication, and then maybe onboarding, and then feature one, feature two, feature three. And even inside those features, there are so many subtasks that we can build and understand. Maybe it's, okay, we are going to build an application that have a chat interface, and this chat interface is connected to Claude, and Claude should be able to communicate with the user. So the first thing I'll do is just integrate an API call to Claude and see that it works. Once it works, I will enhance the prompt message in the system message for the API request, and then slowly I will build upon it. So I know that every single time I'm building on something that works. And if it breaks, I just need to solve small problems instead of going and figuring out like 10 problems on 10 different user experiences flows in the application. Once I have this entire document, what I'll do is I'll just go here and I'll tell them, okay, here is the MVP doc, and I want us to work on this. Let's start with phase number 1. He will grab everything. Or I even tell him the first time, okay, read everything. Tell me what you understand about the application. What is the architecture? What you need? What do you think we need to do? Great, let's start with phase 1. So that's, from my perspective, the beginning of the process. Now, there are two more things, workflows I want to go over. The first one is problem solving. So in the beginning, once you start building things and it becomes more and more robust, you will start seeing that you have those problems. And it's not just, okay, you missed this component and let's download this component. I'm talking about like real heavy problems about user experience, different features, things that doesn't really work as you planned. So when this happens, to not fall into a loop, what I usually do is I'm using these 3 prompts. So the first one will be, I have this problem, and I'll describe all the details about the problem. Maybe I'll even go to the console and I grab a couple of images and I drop it into the chat, right? The agent chat. Then I'm telling him, I don't want you to solve it. And it's very important because they will usually run and start solving those problems, and I don't want him to solve the problem. What I actually want him is I want him to scan throughout every related page, utility, component, or in general related code. I want him to first, I want to build this chain of thoughts, the way he will work from, first of all, get like database, build the information in your mind so you can understand why we have this problem, not only on a specific place in the app, but what is from an entire app perspective, bird's eye view. And then I'm telling him, your goal is to find what is the problem and why we have it. So why we have the problem and what is the actual problem. And only then, when you have first of all the information, and then you understand what's the problem and why we have this problem, because I also want to understand, then present your findings. Once he presents all the findings, I will tell him, great, now I want you to create a complete plan to solving this problem. Remember, we are building an MVP, so keep it simple. It's very important because sometimes they will overcomplex things. I want an elegant solution. I love saying elegant when it comes to building code and creating solutions. And it's very important, you cannot solve this by changing any of the app functions. I don't want to fall into a loop where he solves this one problem and creates another one. Then I will have this feedback loop of, okay, I understand what you're trying to do here, but I don't want to this whatever, and I don't want this, and I don't want this, up until the moment I feel that we have a ready plan. At this point in time, if it's something simple, okay, it's 3-step solution, just go solve it. If it's a complicated one, what I'll do is I'll tell him, great, now move this plan into a markdown file. So create a document here so we can work on solving it based on this file. So he will create the entire plan. It's in a document. I'll just reference the document every single chat. He will know exactly what we're doing. He won't get confused because the conversation is long, and he will know exactly what we need to do at every single phase in solving the problem. Now, from my perspective, it's very similar to plan implementation. So this time it's not a problem, is you have an idea for a new feature. So I have this idea, describe the idea in details. I don't want you to run it. I want you to scan throughout every related page, utility, component, or in general related code. Your goal is to see how we can implement this idea without changing any of the other app functions. Only then present the plan to implement my idea. Remember, we are building an MVP. I want the elegant build, feedback loop, and then I will move it to an MD file so I can reference it and work with it. From time to time, as you saw before, I also want to understand the architecture, especially when he's like solving things and integrating in new pages to the app or new component or new utilities specifically or API routes to the app. And I really want to understand what is the architecture of the app right now, so I can always be on top of it and understand why things works the way they do. So I always know if something needs to change, if we have a problem, if I want to integrate a new feature, how all of it going to come in together. So I will literally ask him from time to time, okay, describe the entire architecture, what the app should do, why it does it the way it do, what is the experience for the user from the beginning until the end. And he will literally describe everything so I can understand, or I can ask great questions. And this takes me to the last part of this video, which is the top tips to start if you're a total beginner, which, and even if you're playing with Cursor right now. So from my perspective, clarity is efficiency. The more you clear on what you want to do, the more you're efficient. So it's a mindset perspective, right? If you're tired, don't sit and start destroying your app because you're not really thinking clear. I will work with like deep work sessions to find the best moments when I'm in focus, I understand exactly what I want to build and how I want to build it. I will create the plans. And then when I'm like less focused, I can use those plans to work with the LLM. So that's efficiency. Then better questions. The better questions you can ask him about your app, the better the development will be. And the way you structure your questions will be the way he will think. So it's about asking questions in the right structure. So the chain of thoughts the LLM is doing is great to the specific use case you are trying to build or understand. Then you want to, as I said, walk him through this chain of thoughts. So understand what will be the necessary information he needs before taking every single step. So sometimes you will need to all the information about a specific problem. So scan the entire code and tell me what's the problem we're facing. So first information, then a plan. And from my perspective, this is the last one, is something I failed in a lot. It's like sometimes I just feel he knows a lot of things, so I just let him do the things. But what I found out is that all of those development tools like Next.js and React, and there are so many different versions of those tools, and sometimes the LLMs are, they just don't know what is the right code to write, and you just get stuck in loops. So what I found really works is when you are working on the app, you can just go to the app and search for docs, add a new doc, and here just provide the link to the documentation. And you add the link, and sometimes even when you add the link, it's an LLM, so they just scan the beginning of the page. They don't really scan the entire page, understand everything. So I'll literally, if I want to integrate a specific function, I'll go to the documentation and I'll just copy this specific function I want to add, and I'll paste it as a picture or as text. And I'll just tell him like, here is the documentation, here is the entire page, and here is the specific segment of the page I want you to work with. And I'll tell him like, work on this feature or whatever. So by giving him the documentation, I'm literally making sure that I'm saving myself prompt time, fast response even with Cursor, and making sure that I'm moving fast and efficient while building the app. So from my perspective, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video.